All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, recording on a Tuesday afternoon on NBA Cup final day. Unfortunately, we don't know the results yet. We are in suspense as to who will emerge as the second NBA Cup champion. Looking forward to that. Also, Drew, say a prayer for my wife as she is taking our 3 children to Portugal on a plane tonight by herself. So I'll be joining her next week. But say a prayer for her because that is, for anyone who's experienced that is about the worst thing that you can do on the planet. Long distance international flight by your lonesome with 3 kids. But she is a saint. We are going to talk about another saint. St. Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback to ever live, and his potential availability or not against the Texans. We'll talk Steelers-Ravens with the AFC North somewhat on the line. Certainly it will be. If the Steelers win, the Ravens will still have to take care of business, even if they beat the Steelers the rest of the way. And then we'll talk a fascinating Broncos-Chargers Thursday night football matchup. But let's start off with Texans-Chiefs. This is the Saturday 1 p.m. Eastern game on NBC and Peacock. There is also the Madden cast of the game that will be available on Peacock. The Texans are 2-point favorites. The total is 39.5. This is going to go all over the place. Patrick Mahomes just said about 30 seconds before we started recording that his expectation is that he's going to get out there on Saturday. So how are you approaching this game with the uncertainty around, 1, if Mahomes will play, and then 2, what he will look like if he does play?
Well, either way, my numbers say bet the Chiefs. The matchup is fun, and honestly, I'm very excited to talk about this game, all the dynamics. Almost more excited to hear about your trip to Portugal, though. We'll save that for off the air. But no, the downgrade from Mahomes to Wentz for me takes the Chiefs from a +5 and change rating to a -0.6. So we'll just say it's a 6-point adjustment down. The Texans, however, I still have pretty close to a neutral team, which means that when you consider home field advantage, this should still be a pick 'em. I think the +2, people are kind of assuming that this is an 80-20 kind of a number, and that maybe it gets to 3 if it is ultimately Wentz. I don't think that's likely. I think this number pretty much assumes no Mahomes, and if he plays, then this goes back to Chiefs -4-ish. And either way, I think the Chiefs have some nice matchups in this one. The Texans offense, I don't know if you saw much of that game against Miami, but boy, oh boy, are things still very broken there. The rushing attack is completely feckless, and it does not seem like Bobby Slowick used the time off to really do any self-evaluation or reflection and make his sequencing any more unpredictable. It was still pretty clearly telegraphed, and the Dolphins had very, very little difficulty, I thought, defending it outside of a couple of clutch plays by Stroud to, who you guessed it, Nico Collins, for those touchdowns, which really was the difference in the game. Texans defense was solid. I think the picks for they came up with a couple of clutch turnovers of Tua that made the game seem a little bit more kind of not in doubt for them as much as it really was. But the Texans defense, I don't think matches up especially well against the Chiefs right now. You can really kind of hit home runs against these guys, and that's what the Chiefs want to be in terms of a vertical attack. The Texans pass rush matches up pretty nice against the Chiefs offensive line that is not doing anything right now in terms of covering themselves in glory. Although I will say that they played a lot better in the last time out, and Mahomes certainly seems like he is developing more of a feel for how to kind of navigate the position in the pocket and be less disrupted by the pass rush. So, it's assuming if it is Mahomes, if it is Wentz, I think the Chiefs passing attack is going to be fine and actually come up with some explosive plays. I think their running attack is going to be fine. I think they get into the mid-20s. And then on the flip side, Texans offense has a tough task here. This Chiefs defense is extremely stout still against the run. Some of the issues that we saw where they just could not cover a second, third, or fourth threat in the passing game has been dealt with to a degree. And I don't think this was opponent specific. I think the Chiefs just are kind of getting coached up as they tend to peak in the month of December going into the playoffs. And this is about as good of a buy low as you're ever going to get on a Chiefs team that I think can handle a pretty underwhelming Texans squad.
Okay, so I think a lot of the discussion around the Texans all season has been about the struggles of CJ Stroud and the offense looking so uneven. I think until further notice, the offense is something of a known commodity. It's going to be very conservative. The O-line isn't very good. Stroud is a little seemingly in his own head and has regressed. Stroud, by the way, has a worse EPA per play this year than Drake May, which isn't ideal. But still CJ Stroud. He's still got Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Joe Mixon is a very solid running back. The offense is never going to be a complete catastrophe, but it doesn't look like it's going to be an elite unit unless something snaps into gear. I'm kind of more interested now in the Texans defense, which statistically all season has been an elite unit in terms of EPA per play. On the season, they rank third, which does not really match the eye test to me. In terms of success rate, they are elite as well, in that top 3 type of range. So when you look at the personnel, the edge rushers are elite with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Derek Stingley is one of the best corners in the league. Kamari Lassiter has stepped up as a rookie, but interior of the defensive line, not so good. And then to your point, they do give up a lot of explosive plays. They're a pretty high variance defense, I think, because of how much man coverage they play, and they are willing to put these guys on islands and have them get beat deep. So what do you make of the Texans defense? Do you think this is actually a top 5 type of unit?
Not top 5 for me, but very close. And honestly, the argument for why they would be top 5 is because, well, who else is good? Yeah. So then who, if not them, who? But no, I look at kind of the way they are currently playing, and really I do a split sample weighting full season data and what are you seeing in the last X weeks, and to do a time decay where we're kind of rating recency a little bit, just rating it at a higher number than what we're getting from the early part of the season. And when you do that, you come up with something in the ball. And I also strip out turnovers, which has been a huge part of their success, particularly recently. So they're coming in like around 8th for me. And that feels right. I think the linebacking core, which has had injury, kind of rotating cast of characters, and then suspensions, obviously, because the Trevor Lawrence hit. That has sort of been the one kind of area where I'm surprised more teams aren't interested and willing to attack. The man coverage aspect you bring up is a great point. Like when they're successful, they're elite, and their pass rush is getting home because no one is open. But it has kind of lent itself into sort of boomer bust, kind of the opposite of Belichick's style defense, where if you're going to succeed against us, you're going to do it in big old swaths and huge chunk gains, and that's going to make the game a little bit dicier. And the same goes for the offense. The offense lives or dies on these high leverage third and forevers, and if Stroud is connecting on to Collins on that day, then it doesn't look so bad. And if he's not, then it looks atrocious. And so I would kind of expect that a defense coordinator with the pedigree of a Steve Spagnuolo should have licking his chops for this opportunity to come up with a scheme to stop this offense, which looks extremely stoppable. Kind of the one aspect that we haven't really brought up is as down as I am on the Texans, I still like them in the 4-5 matchup at home against whoever draws that 5th wild card spot. Like, none of those teams are exciting to me at all, with the teeny sliver of an exception of the Ravens getting that spot, which would change my opinion drastically. But Texans probably win. And they probably go to Arrowhead. And this is probably a preview of a matchup that we're going to see again in the divisional round. So there's going to be a lot to be learned here, and I'm hopeful that Mahomes does ultimately go. We've done this dance with him a lot. Ankle is hurt. He looks bad. Looks terrible. Is he even going to play? He did this against the Jags in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and it looked like is he done for the season? Like, oh my gosh, like the Chiefs just done? No, he was fine. He came back, he played okay, and then ultimately was totally fine come Super Bowl. So he has an ability to play through these sort of injuries, and for whatever reason, his ankle tends to get hurt a lot, and I would definitely not count him out.
Yeah, I need Patrick Mahomes to be okay for Christmas because I can't have Carson Wentz going up against TJ Watt in an island game on Christmas. So I've seen that movie before, even if it hasn't actually happened. But I can see the future there on Netflix. I can see TJ Watt with 2 strip sacks and a 98-yard fumble return touchdown against Carson Wentz, who no man has cost me more money over the journey than Jimmy Butler, but Carson Wentz is second with his various sins perpetrated specifically against me over the course of his inglorious career. With the Texans, their defense, so the defense, like I said, is third in EPA per play. To the broader point about all defenses being bad, Minnesota is second, Detroit is fifth, Green Bay 7th, Chargers 8th, Chiefs 9th, Colts 11th. I don't think any of these defenses are good. I guess Minnesota are fine, but I don't find them to be an overwhelming defense. I think the shine has come off a little bit, and they've been exploited, at least in the passing game. I think the rush defense has been very solid, but I still think the only defenses I feel very confident in are Denver and Philadelphia, and then Pittsburgh's pass rush. And Minnesota, I think, are very solid, but I don't think when I watching Caleb Williams kind of go down the field against the Vikings, and they could have scored a lot more points in that game, the Bears, if not for the failure to report on the touchdown run that got called back, on the 2 failed 4th downs. Like, the Bears could have easily had 24 points in that game against the vaunted Vikings defense. So yeah, it really is only it's kind of like the NBA visual test. Like, do you feel the defense when you watch it? Do you feel Bam Adebayo play defense? Do you feel Evan Mobley play defense? It's like, do you feel any of these defenses off the screen? Like, I kind of like Denver, Philadelphia, yes, but no one else really in the NFL, which is a slightly small amount compared to most years, I think. All right. Today is the second day, Drew, of BetMGM's 7 days of parlays. On Wednesday, account holders will receive an NHL Parlay Boost token, score a bigger payout if your wager with the Parlay Boost token hits. Token can be used on parlays and same-game parlays. Steelers, Ravens, big one in the AFC North. The Ravens are 6-point favorites coming off their destruction of your New York Giants and a recent loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that Russell Wilson did not play well in, but they got the win anyway. The total is 45 flat. This is Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Still some uncertainty around key Steelers players. Looks like TJ Watt will play. George Pickens, still some uncertainty. Mike Tomlin said that no one has been ruled out, but we'll have to wait as clarity arises throughout the week on the availability. Factoring that in, are you surprised that this line is not at a touchdown?
I'm not. It's tough to get there math wise. I'm not high on the Steelers at all. I have absolutely loaded my portfolio with Ravens to win the North, even though that relies on more than just this game. Steelers can win their final 2 after losing to the Ravens and still have the tiebreak over Baltimore. So the Ravens do not control their own destiny. But this Ravens team is they're good. Actually, shoot, man, they're my number 1 power rated team. I have them as a +6 right now. I have Pittsburgh as a +2. So we do the math, and I think ultimately we're kind of right where we ought to be in terms of a fair price here. And in fact, I show a little bit of value on the Steelers. The familiarity obviously makes this an intriguing divisional dog. The defense, as you mentioned, for the Steelers, and their just absolutely diabolical pass rush makes this an intriguing bet on the dog. But I think the Steelers defense is trending the wrong direction. And I actually think you're going to be including the Ravens in your discussion of top 5 defenses once the dust settles on the season. I think this unit is getting a lot better. I think the health and just fitness of Roquan Smith, particularly anchoring the middle of the defense, is really most of the story. This has been an elite run-stopping unit all year long, and the pass defense is finally catching up as they are, kind of figuring out ways to make their coverage less predictable and just in general, figuring out who they want running what parts of the coverage scheme. And I think that going up against the Steelers squad they've seen once and that could only score field goals, this is an opportunity for the Ravens defense really to flex. I think this, the side of the matchup that I feel fairly confident in is the Ravens defense keeping the Steelers in the teens. The side of the matchup that I'm a lot less confident in is, are we going to see what we've seen every single time Lamar Jackson plays this defense? And that is like head scratching. What's happening? Why isn't it clicking? Why, they're moving the ball. Things are going well. Why are we dropping things? Why are we fumbling? How come we can't just get one clean, clean, solid performance from Lamar against the Steelers team? I think it's coming. I think it's going to be this Saturday. I think the Ravens probably win and cover by margin. Because I am kind of at conflict with my qualitative feelings about this game and what my numbers say, I'm probably not going to bet the side. And if I'm going to have one bet on it, it's going to be Steelers team total under, because again, like the Ravens defense, you can't find any metrics to really support that these guys are anywhere close to the unit we saw last year, but it's a lot of the same personnel. And the run stop is good enough that this is really going to put the game on the arm of Russell Wilson, and I don't think he has it.
Yeah, the Ravens last year had the number one pass defense in the NFL. They went into San Francisco on Christmas and completely eviscerated the mind of poor young Brock Purdy and young Brock Purdy MVP ticket holders. This was a dominant unit. They were the only team in the playoffs that slowed down Mahomes. For as icky as the Chiefs' offense looked during the regular season, as soon as it clicked over to playoff time, like the Chiefs, they did whatever they wanted against the Dolphins in the Ice Bowl. The Bills and what was left of the Bills defense could not stop Mahomes at all. And then in the second half against the Niners, they seemingly marched down the field every single time. But the Ravens, outside of like the first drive of the game, was it, where Kelsey has the kind of A+ touchdown mano-a-mano against Kyle Hamilton? Outside of that drive, like the Ravens defense was incredible. And to your point, this is like largely all the same dudes. And yeah, they lost some pieces, but not enough to plummet from being the best pass defense in the league to being 28th in dropback EPA against. So it just never made a great deal of sense to me. But I think a lot of people in talking about this matchup are going to focus on Lamar Jackson's struggles against Mike Tomlin, and they're probably not going to focus enough on the fact that Russell Wilson did not score a touchdown at home against the Ravens in the last matchup. So I agree. I think that Wilson, I think he's fine. I think he's played at a perfectly fine level, but all of his positive production has come on deep passes. It is all deep passes, and a lot of those, deep passes in general just have a slightly fluky element to them because they're so high variance, and it's a half step as opposed to, just getting kind of seemingly 8 yards over the middle like Shanahan's offense was able to get last year. So there's that inherent flukiness. And then also, like, these plays are just super fluky. Like, go back and watch the Steelers-Jets game on Sunday Night Football.
I don't want to watch it.
That was insane. Some of these catches to Pickens and Freiermuth, like, these aren't catches. These are favored to be picks over actual catches to your receivers in real time. So I think that there is something of a reckoning coming there. And it kind of came a little bit against Philadelphia, where they just couldn't do anything without George Pickens. So I think his availability is super key there. Do you think there is something stylistically about Tomlin and the makeup of this defense that specifically gives Lamar Jackson and this offense trouble? Or do you think it's just, they have a good defense and they're going up against a really good offense and the defense has just come out on top a couple of times?
I mean, I've always felt like this particular game, we make jokes and throw out cliches, largely mocking the people who are doing it seriously. Yeah, no lost. Throw out the records. Like, like we're doing it tongue in cheek for the people who are saying it seriously. But for this matchup, it does feel actually kind of serious. Like the defense for the Steelers and those individuals, they wake up that day and they play harder. Like, they're more excited to go leave their bodies on the field in an attempt to achieve glory. Like, there's pretty clearly something going on mentally with the way that the Steelers step up to play this team because of the rivalry. And honestly, it takes something out of the Steelers, I feel like, where after they play the Ravens, they're not quite ready to go again, like we saw on Thursday Night Football against the Browns in the snow. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a very physical game. It feels different than your Ravens Giants game, right? Like that game had very little physicality. This game is going to be very physical, and I think ultimately, that's what's kind of narrows the margins. It's literally just effort and physical contributions. Now, the fact that the Ravens can answer with the healthy dose of Derrick Henry is exciting to me. I'm very excited to see what that does in this particular matchup, if he can get going and you really tilt the field here in favor of the Ravens. And when you kind of really want to parse the performance problems for Jackson against the Steelers, like, there's a 1-of-1 wide receiver drop game in the entire NFL last year, and it happened to be that one of the Ravens dropping passes against the Steelers, and the fumbles and the fluky stuff that happens in the end zone. And like maybe a little bit of it is in Lamar's head, but I feel like most of it just comes down to, kind of happenstance and Steelers effort.
Yep. Yeah, no, I take the point about the matchup. And as a young boy growing up in Australia, in Melbourne, the AFC North is very much in my blood. Drew, grew up with Willis McGahee and James Harrison and Troy Polamalu. And yes, the cold of the Midwest. All right, ring in the holiday season with a double dip of NFL football on NBC and Peacock this weekend. It all kicks off Saturday at noon Eastern as we lead you up to kickoff between the Texans and Chiefs. Then on Sunday night, Baker Mayfield and the Bucs travel to Dallas for a date with the Cowboys.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out with Thursday Night Football. Broncos are 3-point dogs at the Los Angeles Chargers. The total is 42 flat. This is a game with some degree of drama in terms of securing playoff spots. I think there is a very high chance that both of these teams are going to be in the playoffs after the losses by the Colts and the Dolphins destroyed a lot of the suspense for the AFC wildcard spots. How much did you downgrade the Chargers after that trucking at home to the Bucs?
Oh man, I'm down on them big time. The defense in particular, and weirdly, I did not expect to be this deep into the season and be learning that the most important player for the Chargers defense apparently is Cam Hart. His presence on the field mattered like beyond what I would have believed, and the splits with him on and off the second half of the season are like staggering. The defense, I think, got it done. The Chargers defense was running white hot through 8-9 weeks of the season. They ran white hot last time they played the Broncos, by the way. Broncos were 3-point dogs in that game in Denver, funny enough. And I think there were 2 turnovers and 2 punts in the first 4 possessions for the Broncos, where the Chargers went 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and the game was over very quickly. I think ultimately the Chargers defense kind of reached a high point around that game, the month of October. And once they got to the portion of the season where they were playing better offenses and better quarterbacks, they've just been getting absolutely shredded. They can't play a full 4 quarters of solid defense against a good offense. And I don't know that I qualify the Broncos as a good offense at all. But certainly what they're doing is a lot different than the last time these two teams played. It was a completely horizontal attack for Bo Nix in week 5, week 6. And they have now started to open up the passing game where they are more willing to attack the intermediate and deep portion of the field. As long as he is up against zone defense and not man defense, he can look completely capable of running Sean Payton's offense. And I think in general, the Chargers, with, again, not expecting Cam Hart to be able to return from the concussion in time to make it for this Thursday game, which I think really puts the Chargers defense on their heels. You got a lot of old players playing through injuries, the Joey Bosa's of the world, the Khalil Macks of the world. Like Khalil Mack's still an elite player, but boy, oh boy, does it feel like he is dealing with some of the attrition of, having to play through injury all season as well as is Bosa. I think you've seen the linebacking play deteriorate a bit as Perryman has been in and out with injury. That has sort of changed what they like to do in terms of the use of Derwin James. He using him as kind of the key, star player in that defense was notably huge for their success. And as soon as they can't stop the run with light boxes, then they have to change everything that they're doing. And I think a ton of that has come about because of the injury to the linebacking core. So, there's a lot of small things that kind of contribute to this Chargers defense right now not being considered anywhere close to the EPA per play numbers that exist for them over the balance of the season. I would say that they should be kind of in the 20s right now as far as a fair rating goes. And it feels like the market is still treating them as top 10 because of their bank numbers. And that's just not right. So to me, there is sort of one standout unit among these 4, and it is the Broncos defense. They're going up against the Chargers offense that is limited through just their own doing because they have rostered a very weak set of receiving weapons who can, make game-breaking plays. It feels like the Justin Herbert injury story has been a little bit uncovered as well, as he has been uneven since he has been dealing with some more injuries in recent weeks, notably the ankle. And I think that the Chargers right now ought to be considered somewhere in the ballpark of a minus 0.4 type of team, as opposed to what the market is giving them an awful lot of credit here. So this looks pretty clearly like Broncos +3 to me, and I think I'm going to have Broncos money line as well because the +3s are pretty expensive right now.
Okay. Do you buy it all into the Nick Bonito Defensive Player of the Year hype, with his odds crashing down to +650 or so in some spots after being 40 to 1, 50 to 1 coming into the Colts game?
It kind of goes back to our talk about the defenses and who's good. Somebody's got to win, Jay. Why not him? Like, that's the sad state of things right now among like the elite standout players. I will tell you that the 2 most spectacular plays, or two of the 5 most spectacular plays I've seen a defensive player make in the last 3 weeks were Nick Bonito. Blowing up the trick play from the Colts was very, very impressive. Just incredible awareness. Getting in front of the Jameis Winston pass and running it back and against the Browns was hugely consequential. And again, a very impressive instinctual play. I don't think he's done enough as far as body work outside of that to be realistically considered, but he'll maybe get some 5th place votes. And yeah, I mean, but it makes sense, right? Like the Broncos are one of the only defenses we know is any good. So they have to have a representative, and it's either going to be Pat Surtain or Bonito. And Bonito is making the splash plays right now, and Surtain is just doing his job exceptionally well. So Bonito gets some of the attention, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's positions reverse, but I would compare it to Bonito is Deron Bland from last year, and Pat Surtain is Micah Parsons, where even if someone is having the louder, splashier plays that get the headlines, that have people tweeting DPOI, and that are getting questions asked to his teammates about his Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. Ultimately, in the NFL, it is very hard to win Defensive Player of the Year if everyone agrees that the best player on your defense is not you. There is no one on the earth who could justifiably think last year that Deron Bland was better than Micah Parsons at playing defense in the NFL. And I don't think there is anyone who really thinks that Nick Bonito is more valuable to this defense than Patrick Surtain. And it's not even that, that I get that, it's not the best player on the defense award. It's the defensive player of the 2024 season. I still don't think people really think that Nick Bonito has been better for the Broncos this season than Surtain, who is putting up historic stats in terms of fewest yards allowed and gave up like 55 yards the entire month of November, while defending number one wide receivers. So I think ultimately Surtain is their candidate, and is probably a loud moment away either this week in primetime or next week going head-to-head with Jamar Chase from really emerging as the front runner. If TJ Watt doesn't, if TJ Watt keeps doing what he did last week against Philadelphia and just having like multiple sacks and forced fumbles, then he'll probably just win because he's got, I think, the highest ceiling just because he can accumulate stats at a rate that Surtain can't, as Surtain's only real stat is interception. But if Surtain locks up Jamar Chase, that might be loud enough to kind of count as one of Watt's big sack days. But I think that race is actually fairly close, and that Benito is taking up a little bit too much of the market. Like ultimately, like these are voters and people who watch football. Is anyone going to feel comfortable writing Nick Bonito 1, Watt 2, Surtain 3? Like, it just doesn't feel like it can happen. I think he can win. I think there are worlds where if he keeps having splash plays and it just becomes so overwhelming that he becomes the guy. But just think about how it's going to feel if Nick Bonito has like half a sack on Thursday night and no other notable plays, which is probably his median outcome. Then it just feels like he's no chance to win the award again. But so he needs to. It's the same thing like Deron Bland. Like you bet on Deron Bland and you're hoping for, I need another interception return touchdown for him to stay alive. It's like those are really hard to do and they don't happen very often. And yeah, if he keeps on doing it, then he can win. But for the most part, voters, I think, defer to the greater body of work and the play-by-play impact as opposed to, picking off Jameis Winston and Anthony Richardson or on a trick play, A.D. Mitchell, and taking it to the house.
Your point is very, very fair. I will just note that where Deron Bland was doing the unsustainable pick six thing at the wrong time of year, Nick Bonito's doing it at the right time of year.
Sure. Yeah, no, it definitely helps. He could, if he has loud moments the next 2 weeks, he could do it. But the other thing too is that like I think he's 15th among edge rushers in PFF grade. He's like 27th in pressures. I just don't think anyone thinks that Nick Bonito has been better than TJ Watt this year at the edge rusher position. I mean, Watt has his own flaws, but the forced fumbles, the leading the league in tackles for loss, matching Bonito for sacks. I think that most people think that TJ Watt has had a better year than Nick Bonito, and I think that Surtain is the real threat to Watt, not his teammate, because his stats aren't as comparable to Watt's. He's a completely different type of case, and I think one that will resonate if the Broncos, if they close 2-1, get to 11-6, now they have the number one defense in the league. They have the number one pass defense by margin in terms of EPA. It's a pretty solid case for Surtain if he crowns it, I think, with either a big moment on Thursday Night Football or by locking up Chase in a week and a half. I think either of those can really vault him to the top.
I like that breakdown. I was specifically going to ask you if you thought he was live right now, because the likelihood of there just being a general stink around the Steelers as they are accumulating losses down the stretch, I think can hurt Watt, even if he is doing splashy stuff.
Yep. I actually think the market is pretty spot on with this market now, where I think that Watt should be the favorite, but I think it's in the range of Watt 60%, Surtain 30%, and then the field, of which Bonito I think comprises the majority of. I think the field is like 10%. There's still enough. There's running out of time now. There's still enough time, and the top two cases are weak enough that someone could, in theory, come from the clouds. But still, even then, like, say if Will Anderson has 4 sacks across the next 2 games, is that going to win him Defensive Player of the Year? I don't think so. I think it would get him votes, but I'm not sure it'll actually win him the award. So I think that the winner is very likely Watt or Surtain at this point, unless Nick Bonito wants to keep taking trick plays to the house, in which case then he can win the award. All right, we are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.